Hello, this is Coffee Hand Retro Sharker, and welcome back to, not Nostalgia Nibbles. Not the normal Nostalgic Nibbles anyway, this is, I guess, a Nostalgic Nibbles podcast. Because yes, it's just going to be me talking about games this time rather than showing off footage. This is something I've wanted to do for a while now, which is just give a chill and casual and anecdotal account of my personal history in gaming and share some memories that I really cherish and would like to share, and hopefully raise a smile or a nostalgia. I remember that. And yeah, it's just going to be completely unscripted, talking from the heart and from memories that may be fuzzy and not quite right. So if I get anything wrong, you'll have to forgive my memory. But yes, where should we start? Well, from the beginning, I guess. I'll talk about my first memories of gaming, which would have been my mum's Intellivision. That would have been, I was very small, maybe 2, 3. Yeah, can't have been older than that. I have a few memories of that, of the controller, which would look like the dial at the bottom and the keypad, and the way that looked. I have a few images and flashes of that, and watching her playing it. And there was one game I was terrified of. I can't remember what it was called now though. It was a third-person shooter, like spaceship shooter, and you'd see from the back of the perspective of the spaceship. And there was like the alien ships would come to you from the back of the screen, if you like, the front of the screen towards you, and there'd be the like a starscape and not parallax. It's like the ground moving before you, and you'd see like, and if you failed, if you failed the level, you'd see the alien ships like move towards the Earth or something, and like the planet would explode or something. That used to terrify me for some reason. What else can I remember? I should know. What used to terrify me as well was night. There was one game which was quite like a proto horror one, I guess. Nightscape, Night Chaser, Night Hunter, something like that. Night Hunter or Night Chaser or something. I think it got an Atari 2600 port as well, but I remember that on the mum's Intellivision. And yeah, I can also remember being taken to the pub, and there was either a Pac-Man or a Space Invaders, one of those cocktail sit-down versions. I vaguely remember playing that. As I say, I can't have been older than 3. But yeah, that's the first thing those are the first gaming memories I have, the oldest ones I have, is mum's Intellivision. And playing, I guess you can call it playing, smashing the buttons. This the glass display with either Pac-Man or Space Invaders on there at the pub. But yeah, that's the first thing I can remember is Intellivision. And then when my mum remarried my stepdad, he brought with him an Atari 2600, one of the old wood grain ones, and that was, I was old enough then to begin to understand what games were and be able to play them properly. And that's, if you like, my first main memory of playing games would be the Atari 2600, Pitfall 2. Yeah, played a lot of Pitfall 2. And I can remember Pac-Man, a terrible port of Pac-Man, which, if you understand, if you learn how quickly the co-developer had to make that game, it's amazing that anything came of it, even though it's a terrible port anyway. But there are some extenuating circumstances. Right, yeah. I remember Decathlon. I was old enough to waggle I remember my brother and I waggling the sticks at Decathlon frantically. The stiff old Atari 2600 sticks. Pitfall 2, I said that already. Combat. I played a lot of Combat, sending the biplanes around, and what else was there? Breakout, yeah, I remember Breakout. Only the paddles, remember that. What else was on Atari? E.T. We had E.T. Now, actually, I remember borrowing our older cousin's copy of E.T. and having no idea what we were doing, just that E.T. would fall into a pit from time to time. But yeah, we played that for quite some time, and for a while that was my brother and I's main source of gaming. We had things like the Tomy games and the Caveman and a few other ones. But in terms of what was your first console, that would be Atari 2600. Yeah, and soon after that, after my mum remarried, they bought a Commodore 64, and this is where I feel I led a blessed and charmed life with in terms of gaming, and what sets me apart from a lot of people who have memories of gaming growing up. My parents were absolutely avid and fanatical gamers, especially when they bought the Commodore 64. They seemed to light a fire under their gaming passion, because they played Commodore 64 games a lot. It became pretty much their main hobby, which had dividends paying off for my brother and I, as you'll see as we go on. But yeah, the Commodore 64. I wasn't very old when they bought theirs, so I wasn't allowed to play it because it was a complicated PC, a computer, and they didn't want us to break it. But I remember watching then the first year, it would have been 88, somewhere 1988, watching them play a lot of C64 games and getting an appreciation for the C64 through that before I even owned one. They played a lot of Platoon, I remember them playing Trivial Pursuit, Batman, RoboCop. They had the Hollywood Collection, which is a pretty famous and well-liked bundle, C64 bundle. So they played, yeah. The Platoon theme music is like scorched into my mind and soul, basically. And that's when the first kindlings of appreciation for game music started for me as well. I loved, even at that young age, I loved the ocean loading music, the ocean loader. It became part of the C64 experience for me, was that the music as well. It's what, if someone says C64, the two things I think of first are Platoon theme and ocean loader. Yeah, that was a pretty wild time for someone who was just getting into gaming, old enough to understand gaming, because they owned a C64 for quite a few years. And yeah, I have some of my first main gaming memories from that. I remember that they used to play Carnov a lot, and I used to swear at Carnov a lot. Partially because I remember they took their copy of Carnov back to the shop they bought it from, Comtasia in Dudley. It used to be the main place they go to, and they were quite friendly with the manageress there. And from what I gather, it's but actually a bit like RoboCop. It's actually physically bugged. Not physically bugged. The tape was actually physically bugged. There's like little things living in it. But no, the program was bugged, so it wouldn't load. Certain versions wouldn't load after a certain level. You'd see the loading screen with the map. It would just freeze. So that kept happening, and they kept taking it back. No luck. I think Carnov was they had it on as part of a compilation, one of the wonderful compilations. So they kept taking it back, and never got any joy, and we kept playing it anyway, because it was rare that we got that far. Same RoboCop as well, as the C64 version is famously unfinished. They made one of the bosses, I think the second level boss, impossible to beat, but if you were extremely lucky or cheated, you could go past the boss, and the next level afterwards would just be garbage, or pixels over the screen. I remember them going that far, and I think we just thought it was part of the game. I don't remember them taking that back. Yeah. Loading tape woes was also a part of our C64 experience. I remember them whenever a game wouldn't load, we had like weird superstitions, because focused around C64 gaming. Like if I remember, we weren't allowed one game. Like if there was any kind of vibrational motion, it wouldn't load. So if we walked into the room when they were loading this particular game, I can't remember which one it was. I remember my mum saying, like, stop. We have to stand still and not move until it loaded, because if we walked across the living room floor, chances are it would not load. And they were always firing up the we had this thing called the azimuth. Well, we used to call it the azimuth. It was this tape you put in the C64 deck and then play it. It would load a program, and you stick a screwdriver in the. It must have been like head alignment or something. You stick a screwdriver in the C64 deck cassette and turn it around until it hit like a certain frequency and number, and that was like realigning the heads or something, so games would load better. They're always doing that, and then eventually I had to do it as well. So yeah, after a couple of years of C64 gaming for them, and my brother and I watching them play it and drooling over it, because we still had our hand-me-down. My dad, when they got a C64, they handed the Atari 2600 down to my brother and I, so that became ours. And that started looking long in the tooth. We did actually buy a few games for like birthdays and Christmases, and like rare pocket money when the Atari market crashed and games were dirt cheap. I remember one game we had for Christmas was like an Egyptian RPG, a bit like Adventure, like a light RPG, but focused around like Egyptian puzzles and stuff. It was quite cool. I have no idea which one it was. I'll probably have to look at it and find out. But yeah, by the time 1990 rolled around, we were old enough for them to consider us something else other than the Atari. And that was, tragically, not a C64, but a C64 GS console, the C64 console. They bought us that for Christmas, which came with Myth. It came with the pack-in cartridge, which had Flimbo's Quest, Clacks, International Soccer, and then Finished Freddy's Big Topo Fun, which we played quite a lot. I was a big fan of Flimbo's Quest. I really like it. and it's one of the C64 version is one of those where I prefer it to the Amiga version, a bit like Whizball, because the C64 version feels more of an achievement and feels more charming, like same with Creatures as well. Oh, that's another thing, Whizball, that's another strong memory I have of my parents gaming. My mum and dad played at co-op. My dad would play Whiz and my mum would play Cat, and they played through the entire game. Doing that, I remember playing that. I actually love Whizball, in part because of the strong memories I have of my parents' game playing it. So yeah, they bought us the C64 GS, and that was terrible, basically terrible decision, because it was dead on arrival. We had a few games. We had Robocop 2, which my brother and I played, oh gosh, so many times, struggled through it. It was such a difficult game. Oh, it's so difficult. I feel like if I think about Robocop, even now, if I think about Robocop 2, I get this dreadful sinking feeling. I think I've been back to it once since on emulation. Yeah, we had Myth, which is a lovely game still, and again one of those I still prefer on the C64 because I enjoy the premise more of someone from our time being thrown back. I say our time, from the 1980s, being thrown back in time. It just feels more. I prefer it more than the Amiga version. It's like Norse warrior thrown back in time. I don't think we had much else for the C64 GS. I think we had Shadow of the Beast as well, the cart version of that. But it was lovely having no loading times, be able to just put the game on, and play it without having to wait 5 minutes to load and then crossing your fingers. Oh, what else? But then, yeah, soon after that, after the GS flopped, the next year, I think we were finally old enough to be bought a C64, and that was like heaven. Because I could finally play all the games I'd wanted. I loved playing Star Trek The Rebel Universe, Captain Blood, even though it was completely weird. I love Creatures, Great Escape, School Days. Ooh, Spike Goes to Transylvania. That was a bit later on. CJ's Elephant Antics. I love playing Platoon as well. And demo discs, Zaps. We were avid Zap 64 readers. I think we had a few copies of other magazines, but yeah, Zap was 64, and that's when I got my nascent love of magazines, reading magazines. I used to read Zap, just devour Zap, and drool over the Amiga screenshots of things. Like I remember looking at the review of the Amiga version of Batman the movie, and just drooling, just being dazzled by the screenshots. Yeah, they look pretty amazing compared to the C64. I remember the Batmobile and the Batwing sections look glorious. Same with Turbo Outrun and all the cool RPG. I was starting to get an interest in RPGs thanks to an absolute staple of the C64, Master of Magic. Because I was old enough to start reading I used to be a big fan of fighting fantasy books, and I was an avid reader as well. I was quite an advanced reader. I was reading like Lord of the Rings at like 8, and Hobbit, and was it Pierce Anthony novels, Colin in the Gears, and eventually Discworld, soon after Discworld, and David Eddings, The Belgariad. I have my dad to thank for that. He used to read fantasy novels to me at night. And I started reading really, really early. Asterix novels as well, and not novels, comics, Asterix and Tintin. I used to love Asterix and Tintin. But yes, back to C64. We got ourselves the C64 was starting to wind up by the time like 91 rolled around. The C64 was starting to wind down, and you could buy them quite cheaply. So we got our C64, and that was a lovely time. And then soon after that, we started. I remember my parents started looking to buy an Amiga. I think they'd had enough for the C64. And yeah, in 92, sometime in 1992, mid to late-ish, I'd say late 92, they bought themselves an Amiga 600, one of the new ones, newfangled Amiga 600 is quite cheap as well. And that was like, oh my gosh, that was such a paradigm shift. That was my first paradigm shift in seeing and feeling a difference between generations. Like the first big generational leap I can remember experiencing. Just, oh god, the Amiga. We had they bought an Amiga 600 with Alien Breed Special Edition 92, which was a fantastic first choice for the games. And also a Codemasters game called Legend of Agravain. It's kind of it's very much budget fare. Cody's budget fare for the Amiga. I think it was only for $5.99 or something like that. And it's like a vertical platformer, which is kind of bad or kind of awful in a way. But the music is one of those. It's like my earliest piece of Amiga nostalgia is music for Legend Legacy of Agravain. And if you go and listen to that, it still sounds pretty damn good. They bought that. They bought Special Edition 92, Alien Breed Special Edition 92, Legacy of Agravain, and Rick Dangerous 2. And yeah, I can remember just being really dazzled by the Amiga, and immediately drooling over the prospect of one of our own. But that wouldn't come for at least another year. But yeah, I saw they were just buying Amiga games almost weekly, I think. Which again pays dividends in the end for me, as you'll soon find out. But yeah, they played. I used to love them watching them play, like Robin Hood, Adventures of Robin Hood, which is a lovely point and click adventure game. Not point and click, not like Monkey Island or anything like that. It was an isometric one. It was a hybrid of like point and click, strategy, adventure. I'd love to get I've done a nostalgic Nibbles on my channel. You may already know the game as well. So it's a lovely, charming game. They were buying Megalomania and Populous, a lovely Fantastic Worlds compilation. And yeah, my brother and I were so enamoured by the Amiga and so jealous, like so hyped to get one of our own one day, that whenever they went out shopping, and we knew they'd be away for like a good hour or two, or if they went down to visit my grandparents on a Saturday and we wanted to stay behind, we'd sneak down, because we weren't allowed to play the Amiga. Like the C64, we went to play it. That was their console. That was their computer. We'd sneak down and play the Amiga while they were away. I was enamoured with Pirates and Megalomania, and one called Wonderland, text adventure with graphics called Wonderland by Many Scrolls, and Robin Hood, yeah. And we'd play it, and then as soon as we play these amazing Amiga games, we used to look forward to every week. We stayed back at home rather than going down to my grandparents. We'd stay at home just to play the Amiga while they were away, and play Rick Dangerous 2 and a few other things. And then when my brother and I would take it in turns, and one of us would keep an eye on outside for when their car would pull up, and they'd be like, quick, they're here. and we turn the Amiga off, push it back under the thing, put the dust cover back on, try and make sure everything looked as like we never touched it, and then scamper away. This was in the Amiga was in their living room, on our big CRT at the time. We thought we were so sneaky and clever. They knew we were doing it. They because we didn't break anything. They just let it do it. I can confess to them last year that we did it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we know." We're so enamored by the Amiga, and like as the year rolled on, 92 turned to 93, and like it felt like peak Amiga, like 92, well, looking back as well, before our time, but 91, 92, 93 especially, 92, 93, feels like peak Amiga now, looking back. So many classics came out. But then, so we were drooling away, still playing C64 games, which were looking long in the tooth. I played like Good Creatures and CJ's Elephant Antics and buying a few more. And then they bought themselves the lovely and glorious day arrived that they bought themselves an Amiga 1200, which meant that the 600 went to us. Yay! So that was it, and we got the Amiga 600 and entered what I consider my first gaming golden age, because the Amiga was glorious. So many games I played. Elite Plus, played on Amiga first. K240, Utopia, lovely space adventure, space colonization games, Supremacy. I had my first, the Amiga, I had my first experience of a open world, a proper D&D style RPG called Blades, Legend of Valor. No, not Legend of Valor, that comes later. Realms of Arcania, Blade of Destiny. It was based on a German tabletop RPG system called Das Fahrzeug, the Dark Eye, which is quite famous. It's kind of like their D&D, their mainstream RPGs, Das Fahrzeug. Because we could never find. I remember when we read Zap, and sometimes in Amiga Power and CU Amiga and Amiga Format, I'd see mentions of, because I was old enough to start getting to D&D then as well. We were as well as a computer gaming family, we were a tabletop role playing family as well. We used to be heavily into Games Workshop, Space Hulk, Advanced Hero Quest, Dungeon Quest, Hero Quest. So yeah, I was with like one of those, like the most nerdiest family I've ever known. Like, I feel, and this is where the blessing came, because my friends at school and most people I've talked to since, they got games for like Christmas and birthdays. That was generally the only time they saw new games, because my parents were such avid gamers. New games flowed like water. We had a huge C64 library, huge Amiga library of games. So I never had any shortage of games. So that's why I have no experience of piracy, because there was no need. And my parents were actually quite staunchly anti-piracy. I had one brush with piracy, software piracy, and that was when my friend at school lent me a pirated copy of Street Fighter 2 on the Amiga, a big stack of discs. And my parents went ballistic when they found out about that pirated game. I'd hand it back the next day. I had like one go at it. I don't know how they found out. I thought I hid the disc quite well, but yeah, I'm blessed. My gaming history is blessed at the time, because thanks to my parents, I was able to access so many games. My gaming experience at the time is so much broader. Except in those areas where my parents weren't interested. That was when I had like my games, quote unquote my games. for Christmas and birthday stuff they had no interest in, like Frontier Elite 2, K240. Oh, this is what a good point to talk about what my parents' game interests were, in genres, how they impacted my own. My dad was into flight sims, so we were both mad into Microprose flight sims, Knights of Sky, Pirates, Civilization, B-17, Dogfight, any Microprose game we could get our hands on, we bought and played. So my dad was into those. He was into that was mostly it, and some D&D, role playing ones as well. They both loved playing Realms of Arcania. I never finished talking. We could never find any of the famous SSI Gold Box. The only D&D RPGs we had were Eye of Beholder, the Eye of Beholder 1 and 2. That's all we could ever find. But for some reason, I don't know if they just never looked at them or weren't interested. We just could never find them. We could never find like pools of radiance. Yeah, pools of radiance. And the Dragonlance games, we never found any of those. Never found any of those. The SSI ones. Our main RPG, Amiga RPG experiences were Eye of the Beholder, Black Crypt, and mostly Realms of Arcania, Blade of Destiny. And that was such an amazing open world RPG. And I remember there was no in-game maps at all. So because it was like this huge land with about 20-30 different towns and villages you could visit in cities, they mapped the entire world out, every city out, every settlement, they mapped out on graph paper. Anyway, I remember this big folder full of stuff, full of maps. I don't know, actually, one of my cats is rubbing the microphone now, so you might hear some rustles. But they had this folder stuff full of graph paper maps, like every street, every building marked, so they could know where to go, where the blacksmith was, where the armour shop was, where the taverns were, where the inns were, where dungeon entrances were. That was lovely. It was our experience, our codifying experience of a D&D style RPG was Blade of Destiny. No hassles. But yes, that's what my dad was. Mostly flight sims, military sims, things like Saber Team. It was mad into XCOM, UFO Defense when that came out, Syndicate as well. My mum, she mostly liked RPGs, any RPG you can get. So Blade of Destiny was one, Legends of Valor. She enjoyed puzzlers. We play one called. She used to play one called Squigs a lot. It was on a cover disc, probably Amiga Power cover disc. Assholes, come on. And she played Point. This is where my love of point and click adventures was born as well. Was my mum watching her play Monkey Island and Loom, and some degree King's Quest as well. We only ever had, while some families are like King's Quest, like Quest Sierra families, we only ever had on the Amiga at the time. We only ever had 3 Sierra games. We had King's Quest 4, Police Quest 3, and Space Quest 4. That's like some of the hardest entries of the series. Police Quest 3, as I commented on one of Yesterday's recent videos about Sierra, with a love-hate relationship with Police Quest 3. It was so difficult, so reliant on the Sierra logic and police procedure. And Space Quest 4 is like one of the most difficult and frustrating because it's like basically just one big series of timer puzzles. Like if you pick up the unstable ordnance from the tank at the beginning, it kind of like winky eyes that you shouldn't put it down. But if you carry it with you, you're basically just like Walking Dead then. eventually go off. I wasn't fond of Sierra games compared to LucasArts and eventually like Revolution, Lulu the Temptress, and Beneath the Still Sky, and I used to like the other ones as well. Like there was one called Curse of Enchantia, I think it was by Core, which was like a cute dialogue. There's no dialogue in the game. It was all conveyed through symbols. That was cute as well. But yeah, I'd already started picking out like genres I enjoyed, but they were heavily influenced by my parents, and which helped because they bought the games that I like playing. So I had, like, as I mentioned, I led a blessed life of a blessed gaming life of being able to play all these new games. Syndicate as well. We love Syndicate. Cannon Fodder. I also got my first experiences of creativity. I used to use Deluxe Paint a lot. Deluxe Paint 3, I think it was, to create little animations. And I eventually used Amos as well. Got into a little bit about Amos, which is a lovely programming language. Oh, that's one thing as well I've got to mention as well for the C64 is we used to play shoot 'em up construction kit a lot. I used to make my own levels, but what I did mostly was play the pre-made games that came with it. But yeah, that was the Amiga. Was lovely, and it was also my first experience of watching a system in decline. For some reason, it didn't really click with me that the C64 was dying. It didn't feel like it was for some reason. But the Amiga, we were very much aware that after 1994 that it was dying, and 1994 was like the best. I consider it to be the final boom year for the Amiga. There's so many good games came out in 1994. K240 for one. I know Worms came out in 95 and some other classics as well. But it feels like that was like the last good year for the Amiga as a mainstream platform holding its own. Yeah, 1995 is like I can feel it now, like a bittersweet year. I can just feel the dread, echoes of the dread, and the sadness. As we used to follow Bad Influence. Well, we used to watch Bad Influence religiously, and we used to read Digitizer religiously every morning. It was a ritual. We'd sit down, and especially on the weekends as well. I went to school, and we read Digitizer together. And I did watch Games Master, but my parents didn't like. I don't think my parents liked Games Master that much. It was loud and brash, and I don't think I liked Dexter Fletcher either, or the main house either. They were, but yeah, we watched Bad Influence. Bad Influence is my favourite show from that time of the two, because I was really interested in the techie side and seeing new technology and developments in gaming, especially from America with Z-Wright. That was like, oh, America, things in America happening, and he spoke of things that happen in Japan in like hushed tones. Like, oh, Japan's doing these consoles, all these amazing consoles. But yeah, that's one thing I have of the time. None of us had NESs. I didn't know anyone else who had a NES. One of my friends had a Spectrum, so I had a bit of Spectrum experience for that. But I didn't play a Mega Drive at all until after the Mega Drive, and same with SNES, until after their commercial life had ended. But yeah, back to the Amiga and its sad demise. Because we'll start winding up on this episode now, this first episode, because it's 40 minutes. And what I'm going to do is have eras. So this is the 8 and 16-bit era in my memories that time. Yeah, the Amiga's demise. By 1995, we could feel it dying. I remember having some quite heated debates with my mum and dad in '95 as we watched the sales charts kind of like trickle out, and no new games appear. I was they were adamant that the Amiga was going to recover and continue on. I was like, no, it's not. It's not. Look at these sales charts. Look what new games coming out. There's nothing. We stubbornly stuck with the Amiga for another year, all through '95 into early '96, buying up what new games we could. I remember buying from when Game stocked Amiga games, the Wolverhampton and Merrill game stores. They had like upper floors with Amiga games, which always startled me, and Mega Drive games as well. But yes, I remember buying the Acid. Towards the end, there was like a re-release label called Acid Software, and they released like older Amiga games at budget prices. I remember buying things like Dawn Patrol and some of the and Walker and some of the later, the last breaths of Amiga commercial life, things like Gloom, Death Mask, Guardian, one called Guardian, which was like a virus style game, 3D, and Z-Wolf. Like Z-Wolf has Sparius Legacy. That was like, when I think of those games, I said as much in a 2 minutes play on Amiga Nibbles on Twitter, that Sparius Legacy is like, it's a bittersweet, because when my parents, that was like the last game I can remember them buying for the Amiga, was Sparius Legacy. After that, there was like nothing. It was like a wasteland. We still had a huge back library of games, and that's what kept us going through 95, 96, and for me, for quite a while afterwards. But yeah, eventually, we just, when 96 rolled around, we knew the Amiga it was too late. The Amiga was gone. We needed to move on. If we wanted to play new games, have new experiences, after almost 5 years of Amiga, we had to move on. And what we moved on to is what I'll cover in the next episode of Nostalgia Nibbles podcast, and get my gaming rambling and anecdotal game memories. And yeah, that covers the Mega Drive and PlayStation. So yeah, stay tuned. I'll try and do one of these again midweek, like Wednesday maybe. I'll try one for Wednesday, or if not Wednesday, I'll do one on Thursday. Because yeah, I've really enjoyed rambling on for 40 minutes and just sharing some anecdotal memories with you all. Anyone who's listening, and if you've stuck with me this long, thank you for doing so, and I hope it's been entertaining, and I hope it's for those who were there at the time as well. I hope it's chimed with your own memories and how it felt, because it was such an amazing time, especially during the time of the Amiga. I mean, there are still amazing times. One thing I will say about my gaming memory is that I look back these with fondness, but there is still amazing game experiences, plenty now. If you're just focused on the past, you're missing out on so much. But conversely, if you're just focused on the future and current, you are missing out some absolute gems. It's worth looking back to the PS2, PS1, Mega Drive, SNES, Amiga, C64. Play some older games as well. So yeah, that's my motto of just enjoy games, whatever era they come from, old and new, because there are amazing experiences everywhere. So yeah, until the next Rambling Nostalgia Nibbles podcast, this is Coffeehound Retro Sharker signing off.